Welcome to another episode of OG55 Live. We are going live talking all about Tiana's Bayou Adventure. We actually got some pretty big news today in regards to that attraction. We're talking Star Tours, new destinations. We're going to dive into Joe Rohde possibly coming back to Imagineering. I don't know. Where there's smoke, there might be fire with that. We're also going to talk about the Super Mario Brothers movie, the box office, our thoughts in regards to the overall movie, all that good stuff. It's a stacked show on OG55 Live. What is happening, everybody? On this show, we have so much to talk about, so we're not going to waste any time. We're going to dispense with the pleasantries. I'm going to start off with Mr. Vash Sky, producer Dre, host of the Freshly Squeezed show here on the channel. Dre, welcome aboard, sir.
I like you. The dispense with the pleasantries.
You may dispense with the pleasantries. Come on.
I like that. Listen, we got a stacked show here, so I will do the same. If you guys want to follow me at home, you can go and do so right down there at Vash Sky. Just go ahead and type that in. It should pop up for all the, as Christine Wissens McCarthy would say, for all the
robust
discussions. And if you want to see me, well, it's going to be on the channel right. You're watching right now at Orange Grove 55, where we have an amazing show here where we combine a little bit of Orange Grove 55 with a little bit of Orange Nerd. I think it'll be a lot of fun here. And in honor of the Marvels actually coming out.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I was actually kind of surprised by that one. My expectations were like through the floor on that.
Right.
Wasn't that bad, actually. I'm like,
Wasn't
okay.
Wasn't that bad? I was like, wow, okay, this might have some potential right here. Didn't expect that, and I think it took a lot of people by surprise. People who were expecting to really love it were like, maybe not so great. People who were expecting to really hate it were like, not so bad. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see what happens with that one at the box office in the fall.
I could pretty much say that downgraded for me to like a low-grade rash.
Okay, low grade.
Fantastic. Well, and George, where can they find you?
Absolutely. You can find me on my YouTube channel, Disney Family Man 23. You can interact with me on Twitter at Disney George. Please check out the podcast, A Walk with Walt. And of course, you'll find me here on my home base with Orange Grove 55, with Citrus Corner, with all that sweet, juicy, but sometimes sticky Disney news and info.
Pay attention, it's Joe time.
Perfect. Well, let's dive right in. So we're going to start off with theme park news, and we got a lot of it. First out the gate is Tiana's Bayou Adventure. Disney dropped some news on this one today, randomly out of the blue. We got all this information about the attraction, some information in regards to the Disneyland version and what have you. Dre, I'm going to go ahead and share your screen real quick.
Please.
And we'll go from there. So this is from our friend Scott Gooston, who is a wealth of information regarding anything theme parks, but even on the movie side, he breaks news on that as well. But Gooston here says, Disney shared new artwork of Mama Odie in Tiana's Bayou Adventure. Disney confirmed the ride will have, quote, dozens of new audio animatronics when it opens at Walt Disney World and Disneyland in 2024. Disneyland says Splash Mountain's last day of operation is May 30th. Ride closes May 31st. Fascinating stuff. Now I'll start with you, Dre. Out the gate, artwork. Let's talk about that. Well, I know how you feel about it, but we've talked privately about this, but go ahead and let the audience know your feelings on this.
Yeah, so bittersweet, I guess. You know, we knew this day was coming, and now we have an official date, which I didn't look before. Maybe the chat can look for me to see what those reservations are looking like for May 30th. That's going to be a very interesting day, as one can imagine. I had a lot of friends who were like, "Oh, got the day, just to have it, just to be there." It's going to be fascinating with this artwork specifically here. I think a lot of people, I think, judging by what's actually depicted here, I think a lot of people are suggesting that this is going to be the vignette that you see on the, what is it, the
lift hill.
Left side of the log as you go up the lift hill right here, based on the orientation of like what we saw with the model, with the bottles coming out of the drop there, and with this right here. So a lot of people were like, "Ooh, is this actually going to be an animatronic? Is this going to be a screen?" Well, turns out just right before we went live, it turns out that yes, this will actually be an audio animatronic. It'll be one of the new dozens of audio animatronics that they are adding to this attraction here. But I don't know. I mean, I'm not super impressed. I haven't been super impressed with everything that I've seen here. I don't know. It just seems like Mama Odie is just there. She's doing her magical thing. What is actually occurring in this scene? Not sure. Had to be actually told it was magic in the first place. And then you have some maybe some lights and some bottles here. Not super impressed, I guess. And the reason why is because if you take out the color of this, which I think this artwork heavily relies on, you'll see that it's you can see what my problem is with it. I don't think the layout is super good. I don't think the framing is super good. I don't think it really imparts the message or meaning that they are trying to. And you can compare this to vignettes of classic attractions where you instantly recognize what's actually going on in that scene. Not just recognize them from the attractions that they're in, but understand what the scene is trying to convey. Just by looking at it initially. Of course, this is Mark Davis, who is the master at this,
Right.
but and the reason I'm bringing this up and harping on it the way I am is because, well, this is a beloved attraction, right? There are many people who actually believe this to be one of the best attractions in the park that's in, if not the best. So this has a lot of meaning for people, a lot of memories for people, and so when I see stuff that's, I don't know, just not up to that Disney standard that of attractions that we've seen before, especially with this one, it is a little worrisome. And I have some other worries too, but that was kind of my initial impression. It was like, yeah, it's great, it's colorful, but I just don't know if it plays as well as maybe anticipated.
It's interesting. Yeah, I have a completely different opinion on this. I got to be honest. I'm not really super impressed with the lift hill as it is right now. It's like you said, the vignette with the projection shadow. Not a whole lot going on there already. So this will have I'm assuming a really great animatronic. It'll have the beautiful lighted bottles. I'm assuming maybe even some projection mapping. If she's doing her magic, you might have that kind of go throughout the scene. I think it's a fair trade from what we got now to this. I don't know. I kind of dig it. But I see what you're saying, Dre, in terms of like, what is she doing? Like, if you just look at it, what is she doing? Does it really convey that? No, I mean, not really, I guess. But I don't know. For me, none of that really bothers me. I like how it looks visually. I like how, what's the word for it? Whimsical and magical. It kind of, the energy it gives off. And it's, like I said before, it's not replacing anything super out of this world. A lot of the stuff, at least in Disneyland Splash Mountain, a lot of those animatronics, a lot of those scenes look like stuffed animals to me. There's not a whole lot of like real detailed, like, elaborate animatronics in that ride. So I don't know, when I see stuff like this, which could potentially be a much more elaborate animatronic, I just can't be upset over it. But what do you think, George? What are your feelings on this?
For me, I'm kind of like in the middle. I'm still very apprehensive. I'm not holding my breath on anything. However, I will say, out of any news that we got out of this thing in the past 3 years, it's a little bit refreshing to hear that we are getting audio animatronics in these attractions. And Mama Odie, I'm for sure, if they're going to make her anything like the upcoming like Zootopia audio animatronics that's going to be placed in Shanghai, something of that nature, which would be great. I don't necessarily feel like this particular scene should have been for the finale before the drop. Right. I feel like they lost a exactly. This should have been the climb with the bum 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 bum. Are you ready? With all the color. That's the color scheme I wanted to see, like the purples and the greens with the voodoo magic of Dr. Facilier right before you take that final plunge. That for me would have been more climactic and worth the wait than just seeing Mama Odie conjuring up her type of magic. But I digress in that part. I mean, but it does give me optimistic hope that they are going forth with this and they're going to put a little bit more effort than what we have been hearing. And I just have to set the record straight that for anyone who would ever tell us, oh, you fellas are being so negative about this, or, we told you so, yada, yada, that we never said that we were disliking this attraction because of what they are conveying it to be as far as with Princess and the Frog. It's the notion of not putting in a great storyline, not putting in audio animatronics. So if they were to do that, this could really be a kick-ass attraction.
Well, and the thing I like about this announcement today is that Disney is addressing the fan concerns. When Disney comes out today and says this thing will have dozens of new animatronics, they're addressing fan concerns. They're hearing the complaints on Twitter that this is going to be a screen ride, right? This is going to be Fast and Furious supercharged in a log, basically. And Disney is telling you, no, look, we're adding dozens of new audio animatronics to this attraction. Okay, I think that's really, really, really for me, at least, as a fan, I was super relieved when I saw that, right? Super relieved.
And honestly, in my personal opinion, I don't know if this is true or not. I really don't feel like that this was the way that they were going. I think it's because certain people kind of got invited back into the company, part of WDI, that's kind of changing it up a bit, and kind of, I think those are the people that are now responsible for Disney to finally beckon to the call of what fans have been asking for the past 3 years. Right. And I feel like that Bruce Vaughn is one of them. Well, somebody else too, but we'll get into that later.
Yeah, one another big concern for fans was the music. We heard that there was going to be original music, and that is confirmed in this press release today as well. But what was never confirmed before was that we're going to get some music from the movie as well integrated into this attraction. And I think that was a huge relief and another example of Disney sort of addressing fan concerns and fan complaints. I don't know, for what it's worth. And it's funny because a lot of people on Twitter were complaining about this press release, and that's fair. That's absolutely fair. It's just that I hate being in this position because I feel like a shill because I like it and everyone else doesn't like it. But I honestly am not mad, and I honestly like what they gave us today. I really am. I was encouraged.
And I have to say the same as well, only because I'm comparing it to what they were giving us, which was practically nothing.
Nothing,
so,
yeah. Go ahead,
yeah, so go ahead, Dre.
Let's see what they were actually giving us, because I think T.S. Wade earlier made a comment. So it's going to be more of a retelling of the story, or is it going to take place as Tiana's grocery store? This is going to be a sequel chapter story. I think it's important to go over the bullet notes right here.
Absolutely.
Brand new cast of original Disney characters with distinct names and personalities. Okay. Dozens of entirely new audio animatronic figures. That's good to hear. Now, what I'm hearing is that many of the animatronic figures that they actually have in the attraction right now will not be reused. Remember, for Splash Mountain, there was over 100. So it's a little bit disappointing to actually hear that because of maintenance or whatever reasons. Will this actually augment the animatronic figures that are actually here? Will they actually reuse some of them? We will actually see. But at least it is saying there are new animatronic figures that will be... that at least will be added to the attraction. If nothing else, adorable critters with incredible talent, bringing the diverse flavors of musical gumbo found in New Orleans. Okay. New original music alongside favorite tunes from the film. That was the first time we've actually heard that right there, to OG's credit. We had always heard that it's like, well, it's going to be inspired by the tunes that you've heard, but really it's going to be all original music. And I think a lot of people kind of like, whoa. All right. Understand we can't use some of these iconic characters because this is kind of a sequel chapter story, if you will. Can't use Ray, let's say. Can't use Dr. Facilier. All right, but original music for this seemed like a bad move,
Risky.
being that those songs are iconic. But it looks like they will be integrating some of those original songs, maybe rearranged for this actual show. Do you love beignets as much as Lewis? Well, you're in luck because the alluring scent of beignets being prepared for the party will be part of the attraction's queue. So there will be the scent of beignets as you walk through. How they're actually going to do that in an open air queue like it is right now, we will see. That will be a very, very interesting one. Additional talent.
Real quick before we move on, though, Disney Main Street actually does this. They pump the smells of the candy. Now, this is real smells, from actually cooking stuff, but
Sure.
they pump that out onto Main Street. So for what it's worth, maybe they'll do something similar with this, where it's outdoor, but maybe you can still get like a little bit of a whiff of it,
Maybe that kind of ventilation system, though, in order to deliver those smells, not easy. Well, we'll see how they actually do that. I'm very, very curious about the implementation of that, how long it lasts specifically. Additional talent voices from the film reprising their roles, including Bruno Campos as Prince Naveen, Michael Leon Woolley as Louis, and the one and only Anika Noni Rose as Princess Tiana. Familiar faces from the film, such as Princess Tiana, Prince Naveen, Mama Odie, Louis, Eurodora, Charlotte, Big Daddy, the Can Queen of Maldonia, and Prince Ralphie. So they're going to
characters.
Prince Ralphie in terms of the cast here. That tells you not going to have Ray, not going to have Dr. Facilier, if anybody thought that it might. And I think people might be expecting that, which kind of goes over this whole thing of like, I think a lot of people are still going to be expecting kind of a retelling of this story, and that is not going to be the case.
No, it won't be. It won't be like, as I think it's Tony Baxter who says, book report style dark ride, where you go through like the Fantasyland stuff, right, where it's beginning to end, sort of a Cliff Notes version of the movie. It's definitely not going to be that. It's going to be more akin to the kind of stuff we see with like Indiana Jones Adventure or Star Tours or even like Rise of the Resistance, where, and I'm not putting this in the same category as that necessarily on quality, but in terms of storytelling, they're utilizing a franchise, but they're not retelling that story from the movie. They're just using the characters and telling their own story. So that's kind of what they're doing here.
And this is, one of the first times I think with a fantasy tale like this that they've actually done this. So it's a little bit of a risk, and people are a little bit apprehensive of that idea. As I think I think it's warranted to some extent, right? And we'll just have to see about the quality of execution. They have now, if this is going to be closing on May 31st, they have a year and a half to reach that late 2024 deadline right here. Remember, it took Imagineering, almost 10 years ago now. It took them 2 years to redo an attraction a third of this size with Maelstrom. So the clock is ticking. We'll see how well the execution actually is when the attraction opens in late 2024.
Yeah, and our friend Marty Snyder says, heard they pump orange smells in Soarin' to get people to watch this channel. Very smart. Yes, they do, Marty. Yes, they do.
Marty!
Yes, they do.
Absolutely, 100% right there.
And our friend Lovelow says here, I hope we get to hear Ray, the Firefly's voice, somewhere in the ride, maybe on the safety field. See, and that's what Dre was touching upon, is that it's a sequel attraction, so you probably won't hear Ray. You probably will not. I would be surprised if you did, to be honest. I'd be very surprised.
I would be, and that's a shame, because those iconic moments, from that film involving Ray or involving Dr. Facilier, as George actually brings out, can actually be featured. And it's like, is this the smartest move here? We will see. I wanted to point out, too, that scene that was depicted in for Mama Odie herself. Like I was saying before, it's not necessarily clear on what that actually is, what's going on. And I know you commented on the scene prior to it, and yes, it by today's standards, not the most impressive thing for sure. But the framing of it, what it's actually conveying, what you actually like take in as soon as you actually see it, I think is instantly recognizable, right? Obviously, he's about to be thrown into the briar patch. Fox, the Bear Fox and Bear have them finally, and it's impending doom. Like, it reads instantaneously as you go up that lift hill. I just don't know. I mean, it's I just don't know about the execution as of right now. It just doesn't seem overly impressive to me. And again, this is an attraction that is beloved, so we'll just have to see.
Now, is there a case to be made though? Because one of my concerns with this attraction from the beginning was the overtelling, the story knots that they were trying to, like, you see some of these press releases, like from D23 and what have you, and it's a co-op salt mine, yada yada yada, like really these complex kind of story beats for this attraction, and we've all been kind of critical of that, where it's like, you don't need to do that. Some of the best attractions are like Big Thunder or Space Mountain, which are very simple ideas of like, you're in a rocket ship in space, you're in a train in the Wild West. Is there a case to be made though with this scene where it's not saying a whole lot, but is that in a way sort of a relief that it's not saying a lot? Because one of the things that we're worried about is that maybe they're trying to say too much in this ride.
Well, what's interesting is they decided not to retell the story, which means setting up that story and getting people like immersed, like telling it through an attraction kind of format. Doesn't necessarily need to take place, because if you've seen the movie, you get the ride kind of thing. Because they are going with original story now, you kind of have to explain it, right? That's the kind of the tricky part about it. It's interesting. Alien Encounter, George. I think you might remember this attraction from Magic Kingdom's old days, right?
Yes.
Originally, that was going to feature the alien from Alien, the film, Aliens, the franchise, and why the Imagineers wanted to actually go that route is because if you've seen that movie, you know the capabilities of that alien, versus when that was actually stripped away from them and they had to go with the original concept. Now you have to set up the alien, its actual capabilities, and all this kind of stuff. So going with an original story in this case almost mandates that they have to over-explain this stuff, especially with the convoluted storyline that they're actually going with. So I agree with you, OG. I'm glad that they aren't over-explaining, at least in this particular instance. But again, you have a very complex storyline in which you have to kind of convey messages, not just through the scenes and what they actually tell you, but how they're framed, laid out, and so forth. So, like I said, it's they put themselves in kind of a conundrum here.
Yeah, we'll have to see. The context of the ride, because this is towards the end. This is the lift hill. The context leading up to this matters. Also, what she's saying in this scene makes a difference in regards to storytelling and what have you.
Of course.
So we'll have to kind of see what's happening. But overall, I mean, I'm probably on an island with this, but I definitely was encouraged by what we saw today. And I was encouraged that Disney was addressing some of these fan concerns, letting fans know this is not a screen ride, letting fans know there's music from the movie, letting fans know that a lot of the characters, not all of them, but a lot of them that you do love are in this attraction. And that's one thing too, is like, okay, for a normie, you're not gonna have Ray necessarily, right? Or Facilier, but you're gonna have just about everybody else. So is that enough to turn a normie off to this attraction? Maybe, maybe not. But I don't think that's a huge difference or a huge game changer necessarily when you have everybody else showing up, right? I don't know.
I don't know. You're gonna have a lot of normies who, and I know people are like, oh, well, they haven't said anything about redoing the actual attraction. Every single one of their press releases and all this kind of stuff. Yes, we follow this, but the majority of people going to Disney parks don't. And they have a certain expectation when you put, Tiana's name on something, for example, right? And what kind of story that's going to evoke. A lot of people are like, okay, well, I've gone on all these attractions at a Disney park that retell the story. I'll expect this one to be retold. And then you get on and it's like, this is a story that I wasn't previously familiar with. It's interesting. I think Disneyland might be able to pull this off a little bit better, simply because of that local kind of base that they had to draw from. But I'm curious how well this will play in Walt Disney World, only because of the tourist demographic, but also international tourists who might not speak English.
Exactly. I think it's more. And especially just because of right now of how Magic Kingdom is set up right now currently with Frontierland and what have you, it's going to kind of, put an attraction in there and it's kind of going to mix message the land as it currently is right now until we see what is the fate of Frontierland and moving forward, in Walt Disney World's Magic Kingdom. I think for Disneyland, the stage is already set, so to speak, because it's right adjacent off to New Orleans Square. They could do something with Critter Country to kind of liven it up a little bit more. So the story is kind of already there. As I said, I'm kind of like in the middle. I'm like one leg on the island with UOG, but then my other leg is in the lifeboat. So it's like
okay, now I just want to say real quick, California Dreaming, I'm going to get to your super chat in just a moment, brother. We do appreciate it, but I just need to address the Rogue Attractions comment first, because his comment is kind of more pertinent to what we're currently talking about right now.
Sure.
And we are going to move over to the tree stump and everything. So I'll get to you, California Dreaming. But
of course.
Rogue Attraction, friend of the channel, we love Rogue, says people do Rise of the Resistance without knowing Star Wars. Most guests don't care. I mean, he brings up a good point though. It's like if you go on Transformers at Universal, do you have to be super invested into those movies to get it? Or Rise of the Resistance, or even Indiana Jones? Like, that's not an exact retelling of Temple of Doom or any of the movies. So is it confusing for people, or do people just go for like, oh, cool, fire?
I think honestly, because of the storyline of what they're trying to convey with this, I feel that's where it's going to get lost in translation. When you have to explain what an attraction is, of saying, okay, this is Tiana with in this area with the salt mines, her building her restaurant empire. It's like, that's a lot to take in for an attraction.
Indeed. Whereas Rise of Resistance is just, you get captured by the Empire, you break out, right? Also, too, this is not kind of an adventure e-ticket in those ways. It's a princess fairy tale attraction, which those usually simply just retell the narrative as seen in the actual film. And I think people might go in there with that expectation. They might go in there with a thought of what this actually might convey, simply because of the property being used. It's not like Cars, it's not like Indiana Jones, it's not like Rise, it's more like Pinocchio or Snow White or Peter Pan and those kind of things. So I just, like George said, it's a lot of information to impart here, and utilizing, I think, techniques not normally associated with this kind of attraction.
Now, George, I'm not familiar because I haven't been. But is the Seven Dwarfs Mine Train? What story does that one tell? Is it from the movie, or is it just going through the mine?
You go through the mine. It doesn't necessarily tell the full story of Snow White. It more shows it shows snippets of scenes. Primarily, the main scene is when you're in the mine, where you see the dwarfs singing the original song from the film when they're working in the mine. And then you come to the end, where you see the dwarfs playing their instruments, and Snow White is dancing with Dopey. And then outside of the cottage, you see the old crone kind of like spying on them, so to speak. So it's not necessarily a retelling of the movie itself. Just it shows just those two sequences, and it's more so just of the thrill of the roller coaster itself.
So I think that's kind of like maybe what they'll go with here, like scenes depicting stuff, kind of evoking certain energy in these different show scenes or whatever.
Now I semi can agree with that. The only thing that I disagree with that is with Seven Dwarfs Mine Train, you're basically only getting a 2-minute ride. It's a very short ride. Very good. I mean, the audio animatronics are very
Impressive?
decent. Yeah, impressive, definitely. But when you have a ride layout like Splash, that's what is that? 11 minutes?
It's long.
Yeah,
that's a long time that you have to convey people to say this is what's going on in each scene. Where even with Splash Mountain as it is today, the basic storyline is you're following Brer Rabbit. He's trying to get to his laughing place, and he, thinks he can't get into trouble, and trouble can sometimes follow you. So it's like you're going back to the Briar Patch and what have you. I just think that they're just kind of going a little bit too strong with a story that doesn't need to be.
Yeah. We'll see. We'll see. I just don't know how many people really follow the story on Splash Mountain, or they're just chilling in the log and then waiting for the drop. I don't know how deep people go with this.
It's a different kind of story. That's the thing. This is a fantasy. It's a fantasy tale here, and usually that follows a certain pattern. I believe one of the only times where they kind of went into another direction was with maybe Frozen Ever After, right? Where it's kind of an original story that takes place with that attraction. But that story is very simplistic compared to this one. So, and features the beats I think that that people want from that from that experience, right? This is something very different and unique. So we'll just have to see how it actually is taken in by guests. California Dreamin' 199. Thank you so much for the super chat. We really, really do appreciate it. Actually, you know what? Let's see. There you go, right there, right?
There we go.
And I'm sorry. And before we go any further, we have to give also a shout out. He did it in the very beginning. Mr. Theme Park Wizard gave us a little donation at the
You're
very
right.
Sticker. Yeah,
I missed
you're
it.
right about that.
Thank you, Mr. Wizard. We love Theme Park Wizard. Check him out on YouTube. He's awesome, 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 especially with everything Universal. He's doing fantastic work over there.
Absolutely.
So this is the progress. Speaking of California Dreaming's comment, removing the tree was a mistake. This is Florida, Magic Kingdom. Look, they not only took the stump out, they're taking the rock work all around this thing out. That surprises me, actually.
Do either of you fellas have taps?
Yeah, this is interesting. This is interesting. I don't know. I wasn't expecting it to get this much of a haircut. I thought they would stop at the stump and kind of leave it at that, because that's what the model suggests, that it was just the stump that was going, that they weren't going to necessarily
aren't they flattening it? I thought they were flattening it as like one big platform that's just going to kind of sit on top, but it's going to be.
I don't think it's flat.
They might be cutting more of it out in order to rebuild it. So that's kind of, I think that's where they're going with this. It is shocking for sure, at least right now. Let's wait until the final product on this for sure. But man, I don't know. I mean, this is now we're going into the unknown. Let's say, with this whole thing, and there's no turning back now.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. It's interesting. Now, one big thing about this whole attraction, it's an elephant in the room. I know everyone's going to hem and haw when I bring it up. I know chat's not going to, but the culture war, this ride is like the epicenter of the culture war right now, right? Mm-hmm. This is the epicenter of the culture war. Is that going to impact reception of the attraction? Because you have people on the left that will probably love it no matter what. You got people on the right, they're like, I'm going to hate it no matter what. Is that going to impact the overall success or failure of this attraction opening? Or is it not going to matter? Are those two fringe groups that don't really matter at the end of the day? And it's the normies that are really going to call the shots at the end of the day. What do you guys think?
Oh, man.
That's a tough one.
It's interesting. If you pull for this attraction, just across the internet, you usually get more against the change than for the change, and that crosses like ideological boundaries. I mean, just people who maybe sit on a certain part of the aisle, even they're like, not so sure about this change here, especially when they learn more about it and hear more about it and so forth. I think this is going to be less of a cultural, landmark, I guess, and more of a, why did you take my favorite ride away for this? I think that's the bigger concern right now. I don't necessarily think, it'll be dragged to the culture war a little bit, but maybe a segment on Fox News or something, right? It's not going to be, I don't think it's going to be featured that heavily as part of like, oh, look what they're doing to this or whatever, as we've seen before with other things. Right now, my biggest concern is kind of the populace coming into this thinking they're going to get one attraction and showing up and getting another. We saw, when we had some guests on our show, and we told them about what was actually going to be featured, hadn't, not knowing about the attraction beforehand and what the details were. There was a response there that was very memorable, right? I just hope that doesn't actually occur on the ride itself.
But remember, her response was also based on the music not being in there, and now we know it is. So that's interesting.
She also said Ray the Firefly, and she said this kind of stuff. And
so that stuff for sure. But part of her response was based on that music, original music not being in there. And now, at least some of it is. Hopefully, going down the bayou is part of this whole thing because that's like made for this attraction.
Come on, that's the obvious one. You got to feature going down the bayou. I mean, it's too obvious. It's too obvious. But maybe that means they won't do it because.
But even with going down the bayou, I mean, they could always get someone else to sing it. But that was Ray singing in the film.
That's true.
Yeah. Now, Nerves and Gel, I believe, says people can't even decide if the Mario movie is woke or not. If the ride is good, it's good. If it's not, it's not. But some are going to use it on YouTube. Okay, here's the thing. We're going to talk about the Mario movie and all that later on. That whole thing with Mario. You're right, though, the overall culture war and how people are approaching Mario. You bring up a decent point. Everyone's definition of woke is different. Maybe some people will think that this is not woke, and some people will think it's extremely woke. We'll have to wait and see how it's handled. Really, look, I'm very bullish. Actually, I shouldn't say very bullish. I'm encouraged by what I'm seeing today by this attraction. But make no mistake, it's all about the execution. At the end of the day, the press release is the press release, and it's all talk. But if this attraction opens and it's booty hole, it sucks. Okay, then it sucks. It's all about the execution. So let's see how it's executed. Let's see how it's presented to us, and we'll go from there. It might come off extremely woke. It might come off not woke at all. So we'll have to wait and see. But you're right, though, Nerves and Gel. There's going to be debate about that for sure. Absolutely.
So basically, you heard it here, folks. OG just described what the final drop was going to be. It's a booty hole that's releasing a log turd.
Right. Exactly. That's exactly it. But
yes, folks, we only have high-class stuff on this show.
100%. But you know what? We're going to move over to Tomorrowland.
May I have your attention, please?
And talk a little bit about Star Tours, because it was announced that Star Wars Celebration, that Star Tours is getting some new destinations. And that's pretty much where the news starts and stops.
Pretty much, yeah.
We don't have any information on where we're going or anything like that. But new adventures start in 2024. Here's my thing with this. I'm excited. Okay, I'm excited, but also a little frustrated. Okay, you have a 15-acre Star Wars land in the same park here at Disneyland, at least, right? 15-acre Star Wars land. You have a brand new Millennium Falcon attraction, which we were promised we're going to get several adventures as time goes on. Still haven't gotten that, right? And we're still updating the attraction from the mid 80s constantly with new destinations. I wish they would take this kind of love and energy and money and put it into the Star Wars area that you just opened. I just feel like this is like kind of throwing money away. It's like, I don't know. I'm a little frustrated. Am I excited to go to new planets? Absolutely. Maybe we'll go to like Navarro from Mandalorian, things like that. That's cool. That's dope. But it's like, what about Galaxy's Edge? What's going on over there? I don't know.
Did they hint at new characters being introduced in Galaxy's Edge? Right. Okay.
They did say actually, more characters will be making an appearance. Probably Ahsoka.
And planets that's not even introduced to us yet.
That's
right.
Possible.
As far as this goes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean that even goes for Walt Disney World also. I think it's kind of ironic that on both coasts, Star Tours is in the same exact park as the actual Galaxy's Edge Star Wars themed land, because primarily speaking, just for Hollywood Studios, you have that whole entire land. And then you have Star Tours kind of sitting over at Echo Lake right next to the Indiana Jones Epic Stunt Spectacular, which again, that's how much acreage within itself that they can completely just kind of reuse that land, so to speak, for something brand new and fresh. So now this tells me also for Walt Disney World that Star Tours isn't going to be budging, moving on in that section. So it's like, okay, so again, I'm curious about it. I'm semi-excited about it, but then I'm also looking at the bigger picture. Is now this attraction is going to stay even longer, and the real estate that it's sitting on.
Absolutely.
I don't think Star Tours is going to go anywhere. You know, there was some talk, there's some chatter, and could we reuse these simulators for something else? Right now, I think it's going to stay where it's at. And like Disneyland's, for example, Disneyland Star Tours is the best possible use of space. Because of modern building codes, you literally can't replace it with anything else of size of substance, right? So it'll always be, I think, a simulator attraction in that space, no matter what. And some people, they really like Star Tours. I mean, it still plays, and it's a way to promote product, and it's pretty easy. I mean, these things are pre-rendered and so forth. You just slot them in, you're good to go. Whereas something like Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run, for example, that is in the Unreal Engine, right? It's utilizing those, I think, 8 Quadro GPUs that they have, kind of daisy chained for every single pod, which is insane. But I guess what they found out with that attraction was it's a lot harder to actually program for that because it is a dynamic attraction versus something that is pre-rendered like Star Tours. And because of that, it's just a little bit more complicated, requires a little bit more time, requires a little bit more effort and money. So, and it's built to be modular. It's very unfortunate, though, that they haven't capitalized on that because Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run, it's a little old in the tooth now. It's a little old hat. It would rejuvenate that attraction if you, let's say, infused it with a new mission, maybe featuring the Razor Crest, for example, or the Naboo starfighter flying behind him, or hey, maybe you're participating in, I don't know, a certain battle that might take place up in the skies over Mandalore during this finale series of episodes here for the Mandalorian. That would be cool, right? I think that'd be awesome, but again, it's they take the easy way, I guess, with these things.
Yeah, and Marty Snyder here says, nothing like entering Tomorrowland by passing an attraction set a long time ago. Here's the thing, and I've heard this argument a lot, Marty, and you're not the only one who says this, and I respectfully have to push back on this. Respectfully. Yes, it's a long time ago, but it's still the future to us. We don't have any of this technology, so it's still the future in my opinion. But I see what you're saying. No, this is Jerd. Says they have a huge theme land dedicated to the same IP. Why not utilize it? Exactly, dude. Like, exactly. Like, why are we constantly throwing stuff into Tomorrowland for Star Wars? You just built a 15-acre land dedicated to Star Wars, but you're so hell-bent on the stupid timeline that you can't even, utilize it, right? Look at remember they had a 3-hour line for Princess Leia at Princess Night. It's unbelievable. Can we get some of that love over in Galaxy's Edge every now and then? What the heck?
Well, that's the thing, too. A lot of people who were seeing that online were like, why isn't she over in Galaxy's Edge? You have a Star Wars land for this specific purpose. And it's
right.
like, well, some people were making jokes, the rules of the house kind of thing. You can't put Leia in Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. It's like, we gotta... Man, you want to break it right in half like a 2x4, It's very, very unfortunate.
Absolutely. Which brings us to our next topic, which Disneyland Forward is back in the news. Now, a lot of people in chat watching might not realize this, because this was actually brought to our attention by Disneyland View on Twitter. Check them out; they're awesome. But Dre, if you want to go ahead and set the table with this, and we'll kind of go from there.
Yes. So if you have been following the Disneyland Forward project, initially it looked like, hey, all things are a go. Anaheim's going to approve this, no problem, and it's all going to be good. And then a certain mayor decided to, let's say, enrich himself in his campaign. When selling some real estate in Anaheim, and it created a little bit of controversy regarding the FBI and so forth, and Disney's dealings with Anaheim itself, calling it a like a cartel almost or something, and it was pretty strong language there.
Yeah.
So it's
Cabal.
back.
Cabal, actually.
Cabal, that was it. Yeah, Cabal, right? And so it was kind of on shaky ground, like, ooh, what is actually going to happen? Well, a vote recently took place, obviously, in 2022, and, well, the new mayor is, where she aligns regarding Disney is questionable, open question right now. It looks like the city council that was voted in got rid of some members that may have opposed this idea, let's say. So it is now back on the table here. Disneyland Forward gets momentum again after post by Disney. And what this actually details is, I guess there's a, what are they calling it? A community coffee is what they're saying, to answer any questions people may have about the Design Forward project. So this is the notice and comment period of this kind of discussion right here. They're going through this process right here, which is, I'm sure, mandated by, Orange County law, let's say, for projects like this. And so it is working its way through the pipeline, and it looks like it will be up for consideration. Actually, who was it? It was David Jackson says, also the city of Anaheim has updated this fact sheet every 3 months. They expect city council consideration of Design Forward in late 2023 or early 2024. So votes coming.
Well, and this is fascinating because we just heard Bob Iger talk at the quarterly earnings report, saying that don't underestimate the growth potential in California. And now we're hearing this. Now we're hearing that Disneyland Forward seemingly is still moving forward.
Yep.
I don't know. I mean, like I always say, guys, too many coincidences are never a coincidence. So I think that they're bullish on this. Now, look, that doesn't mean it's going to happen for sure. I mean, they still got to vote on it. They still got to push it through. But I don't know. It seems like Iger knows something when he said that there's potential in California people aren't aware of. Now we're hearing there's movement on Disneyland Forward. It's all very, very, very good news. What do you think, George?
And especially since they're taking the time to do something like this. Knowing Disney, they would not, take a moment to make an announcement like this saying, oh, at this specific place, at this specific time, we're inviting guests and locals to come on and ask us questions about something that we have in a pipeline that's not even really confirmed without being confirmed, so to speak. So right. Disney would not consider doing something like this unless they know kind of for sure that it is moving forward, but they kind of got their ducks in a row of how it's going to play out.
Well, and this would be a real boss move to get this through, right? To get it approved, and Disney and Anaheim come out and say, hey, we worked out a deal. We're going through with this or whatever. We're happy to work together. Because that it would be like low key throwing a shot at DeSantis, because the whole thing in Florida right now is an absolute mess, right? And if the Walt Disney Company can say, hey, look, we got no problems over here in California. Anaheim's willing to work with us. They want new jobs. They want more jobs. They want their economy to thrive, right? It's a shame that DeSantis in Florida don't feel the same way. It's an opportunity. If they want to take it, we'll see.
Assuming DeSantis is even there to hear it.
Oh, that's another point. Yeah, right.
No, I actually have some interesting updates on that specific point, but we will have to save that discussion for another time as it relates to the RCID. So trust me, folks, it's getting interesting out there in both Tallahassee and in Orlando. But I think the next story that we should probably bring up here, it's a little announcement by Disney Parks themselves regarding a new tour. OG, you want to take us away?
So this was actually tweeted today by the official Disney Parks Twitter account. Travel to the Arctic with former Disney Imagineer Joe Rohde. Yes, please. Joe will be joining Adventures by Disney guests for an exciting Arctic expedition cruise this summer. Now, first of all, that expedition sounds dope as freaking hell. Okay, ooh. I mean, this is incredible. But the real story, though, is Joe Rohde. Okay, now we've talked a lot about, since Bruce Vaughn came back from Imagineering, he came back to run Imagineering again. Dre, I think we did a video on that where it was like, this is gonna be interesting for Imagineering because it might incentivize talent that's left before.
Correct.
to come back. It might be like, hey guys, the water is warm. It's safe to come back, right? Basically, another
Right.
element in all of this is that Virgin Galactic, I think is what it's called. Yeah, Elfstrom Family Videos got it. Rest in peace, Virgin Galactic is filing for bankruptcy. So it might be Rohde looking for a new gig. Well, what's old is new again. Come back to Imagineering, baby. Let's go.
So it's interesting about this Virgin Galactic here. I guess they spun off a subdivision called Virgin Orbit that actually filed bankruptcy. But Virgin Galactic, not far behind when it comes to maybe filing Chapter 11 itself. So I think... let's say Joe Rohde, he's a smart guy, probably reading the tea leaves saying, wonder how long this gig is actually going to last here. We have Bob Iger back in the chair, in the CEO chair in Burbank. We have Bruce Vaughan back. Maybe it's time for a change of scenery. And so for the meantime, it is Alaska. I don't think that Joe Rohde's going to be complacent there. I think he's got it. I think he wants to create for the mouse again, especially on the eve of maybe Avatar coming to Disneyland.
And also, too, this has no correlation to anything. This is just me. But if you actually look at that tweet, the first thing that I noticed coming from the Disney parks, all I saw was Walt Disney Imagineering, Joe Rohde, and then Expedition. So basically, I'm putting both of those together. Joe Rohde, Expedition Everest. Come on, Rohde, fix the Yeti.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
It's not about Avatar Disneyland. It's about the Yeti. Finish what you said you were going to do.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah, because I mean, the Pandora thing is the big elephant in the room too. Is like, I know a lot of people, this is so contentious on Twitter, like in Disney fan community, like there's so much discussion around like what is Disneyland going to get in regards to Pandora. Some people think it's going to be just a kind of like a temporary fill-in thing for like the launch bay or something really, really simple. And some people like us here, we're saying no. Based on what Bob Iger is saying in these quarterly earnings reports about, wanting to increase capacity, constantly comparing the Pandora experience at Disneyland to the one in Florida and even Galaxy's Edge. We think it's going to be an actual land, a real fleshed out land. If it is a real big thing, like a fleshed out land at Disneyland, I could see a Rohde coming back for that. Absolutely. That's his wheelhouse. He would be all about it.
I think so.
We'll see. Now we got one more park story, which is actually pretty interesting.
Oh yes, and it merges beautifully with the Orange Nerd segment of the show.
Yeah, beautifully, absolutely beautifully. And a lot of the chat, this is probably gonna be breaking news for a lot of people. Okay, this is breaking news for a lot of people. So we have a fantastic friend, contributor of the channel, Alia Aloha. She's amazing, and she is she's a subscriber to Matthew Bellani's Puck website. Okay, and for those of you that aren't aware, Matthew Bellani is very much a Hollywood insider. This guy has talked about going to lunches with Bob Iger. Okay, so this guy is not just some average schmuck on the internet. He very much knows what he's talking about, and I think he was an editor for one of the Hollywood trades back in the day.
Very connected to the Hollywood establishment and the elite.
Very much, big time. So, Dre, I'll let you do the honors and read a snippet from one of his latest, I don't know what you call it, blogs,
Updates?
I guess,
Yeah.
update article. Yeah. Read that, and we're going to talk about it because this is dope.
Yep, for sure. Per Eric Gardner of Puck in regards to Hulu, Marvel, Comcast, and Disney, quote, I can't say for certain what will happen, but over the past couple of weeks, I've heard from a couple of insiders that Comcast has something that Disney desperately wants, certain Marvel rights. And there's been some discussion about a swap. Now, if you'll remember, Bob Iger was actually asked about this at the last annual shareholders meeting. And if you remember Iger's kind of cheeky response to that, he's like, ooh, I like the way you think, but I can't go further. And we all kind of speculated, ooh, that may be maybe it's there's a chance that what that was those negotiations were taking place actively,
right?
And in order not to step on them, don't talk about it much from there. I think that's what's going on here. I think it's not just about the Hulk theatrical rights, for example, which I'm sure they want as well.
Right. And Hulu and all that good stuff, right?
Well,
Trade-off.
it would be a trade for Hulu's remaining shares, right? With Disney, right? So you're talking about maybe $20 billion in assets given over to Comcast in exchange for, I'm sure, cash,
Right.
but also. In this case, the rights to Marvel attractions and theme park content east of the Mississippi. This is the big deal. This is the big deal that has been, let's say, restraining Disney's investment in this area when it comes to its theme parks. Right, we have a 14-acre land for Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, for example. Right, why don't we have something of scale and substance in the same way that we do for Marvel? Even though it's far bigger than Star Wars is right now. You're talking
Right.
about the most successful film franchise that the world has ever seen. Why haven't they capitalized on it more? The biggest reason is because they can't capitalize on it or leverage it appropriately at their crown jewel, which is Walt Disney World. And when you don't have that kind of ROI to kind of go back on, it makes investment it's a dubious proposition at best. Which is why even the Avengers e-ticket that DCA was going to get, which, by the way, folks, might be back on the table because of this development, but that's an interesting story.
And it might have went off the table because of this, because of the unknown, right?
Exactly, right? That's why they were trying to build it at Hong Kong Disneyland as well. Well, now when Disney looks at investments into that area of the world, it's like, it's with some skepticism, let's say, right? So back at home, it's like, do we necessarily want to pour this amount of resources, money, and so forth in a one-off if we can't duplicate it on the other side of the United States?
And Disney is always notorious for that. If they're going to pour money into one, they'll save a whole lot of money up front to making multiple.
Your ROI is completely different when you can actually build two of them rather than one.
And Vampire Chickadee here says, I'm sorry, but Universal's perpetual contract with Marvel is way, way more valuable. Now, Vampire, is it though? Because if you think about it, Universal's hands are completely tied with that land. They're never going to be able to build another attraction there. Disney will never sign off on that. All they can technically do is keep the land as is and refresh it with new paint, keep it updated, looking clean, whatever. They can't add anything. So why would Universal, who, to be honest, and we're going to get into Super Mario Brothers in a little bit, but why would Universal, who is stepping up their studio game tremendously, and incorporating more of their own IP with Illumination, with DreamWorks, all that good stuff, why would they want a land dedicated to a Disney IP that they can't do anything with it? You know?
Let's be honest, Islands of Adventure, the superhero island part of IOA, unless you're talking about the Amazing Adventures of Spider-Man, everything else is basically regular based amusement park rides that are just themed around Marvel. The Hulk coaster is just a green roller coaster that could be rethemed to anything else.
Right.
Doctor Doom's Fearfall is a drop ride that could be rethemed. The Stormforce Acceleratron is a spinner ride, sort of like a whip type attraction that could be easily rethemed. Other than the Amazing Adventures of Spider-Man, which could even
that could be rethemed.
changed.
I mean,
exactly.
Technically, Transformers is a version of that.
Exactly. So, I mean, other than that, because the Amazing Adventures of Spider-Man is so heavily themed, even to the queue, which is great. But as I said, in time, it becomes outdated because we also have to think too that Universal's Marvel is based off of the comic books and the cartoons.
Right.
So how relevant is that going to be moving forward when you now have Disney's more popular version of Marvel? And it's so easy for Universal to transfigure that land into something that could even benefit them more in the future than just holding on to the Marvel rights just to not give it to Disney.
It doesn't make sense.
It's the thing too that land is stuck in a time period that's actually predating Sony and Fox's, Spider-Man trilogy, right? That kind of revolutionized the comic book game as we know today, several generations ago, right? So it's stuck in the 90s version of those comic book characters and so forth. And it will always be there. Now, to your point, Vampire Chickadee, there is value in keeping the Marvel brand, for one, for royalties off merchandise and so forth, but two, keeping it away from Disney, right? There is value in that for sure.
Right.
But let's think about this for a second. Is it really worth up to $20 billion? I don't think so. I mean, at most, you're talking about 6, 8, at most.
At most, yeah.
And I think for Comcast to get into the streaming game, they would be a number one player really overnight if they were to get those Hulu rights. That is far more valuable to them and their long-term implications than just holding on to some Marvel rights away from Disney. It is advantageous for both sides to actually accomplish this deal in this way.
Well, yeah, and you offload Hulu from Disney's perspective, right? You offload Hulu, so you make the money from the sale. And then then it's perpetual money for God knows how long, because now Comcast has to pay a licensing fee to play things like Family Guy, to play the FX stuff, to play the Fox stuff. So now all that Disney content that's on Hulu, Comcast will pay a licensing fee to Disney. So it's beneficial for Disney. It's beneficial for Comcast because now they're, like you said, Dre, they're a big player in this streaming game. Mocha Bean here says, what will happen to Peacock if Comcast gets Hulu? Does anyone even watch Peacock? They could close that tomorrow and they probably wouldn't even know. Hulu is so much bigger. I think that they wouldn't even. Maybe,
do you think there would be maybe a cross,
like a bundle almost?
Yeah, or like a cross integration with that? I mean, I could see that, but I don't know. Peacock is kind of separating itself out as kind of this, let's say, ad-only value brand. So yeah. I would guess it would stick around, at least for the moment, until Comcast actually gets its bearings on what the ARPU situation will look like with Hulu under their full control and so forth, right? But the advantage to this, for Disney even, is that you can still benefit by the royalties off the milk from the cow, but you don't have to own the farm, right? And maintain that, the taxes and all that. You can think of it similarly with Hulu. Right now, it's the ARPU is great, the average revenue per user, but still, it's not enough to buy you their DTC situation as of right now, right? But if they offload that and then collect royalties and so forth from that content being on there, licensing back from Comcast, that puts them in a much more advantageous position overnight. Yeah. Marty, go ahead.
Oh, I was just say, here's the thing too, is like even Disney Plus, and I know this is like kind of like blasphemous to even say this, but Disney could even technically sell like a Disney Plus to like an Apple, right? And then Apple would have to pay those licensing fees to basically house that content.
Correct. And
people might think, oh, that's crazy though. It's Disney Plus. Why would they would never sell it? Not so fast. Disney sold the Disney stores like a decade or so ago to a retail company called Children's Place. So Children's Place technically owned the Disney stores, and they just paid Disney a licensing fee to sell stuff with their characters on it. Why wouldn't Disney even consider selling Disney Plus? Look, let the tech company run the streaming service. They know what they're doing, and it's expensive to maintain those. It would be very beneficial for Disney financially to sell off even Disney Plus and just have it licensed out. So
and let's be honest, Disney Plus right now is what's kind of keeping Disney, kind of like gridlocked in like this financial situation, because it's
for sure.
It was a huge success with the numbers hitting and everything when it first opened, because due to the situation, no one can really go out and do anything. So what more can you have? As time progressed, it's almost like becoming more of a hindrance to them.
But even under those conditions, George, it still wasn't profitable. And that's kind of crazy to think about, right? So it's like, this thing is a drag right now. Obviously, Iger has plans to turn it around and make it profitable. As he's repeated many times before, they will achieve profitability, at least from what they're saying, their projections and so forth, by Q4 2024. But again, it's like, yeah, even if you're profitable, though, how profitable are you considering the amount of cost that you're actually sinking into this? And it's taking away from all your other investments. So it's something that I think needs to be addressed. And OG, I don't think that's outside the realm of possibility. Your scenario with Apple actually on Disney Plus, but for this Hulu thing, this needs to be addressed. There is I believe, a contractual stipulation that this be addressed by 2024. The ownership between Disney and Comcast regarding Hulu. Right now, Comcast owns 33%. Disney owns the remaining 66% or so. This has to come. This has to be resolved by next year, and I think it would be great if Disney comes out ahead with these specific rights. I think that'd be wonderful, and maybe even turn their DTC division around by offloading some of their assets while still collecting licensing and royalties.
Yeah, absolutely. And Marty Snyder actually is actually helping us segue into our next topic.
There it is.
But Marty Snyder here says Universal might even want to double down even more with Potter if the series hits hard. I'm actually pretty bullish on this Potter series, Marty. We're going to talk about it. So that's I think that's a perfect segue into what we're going to talk about right now, because there's a lot going on with Warner Discovery, Harry Potter, the Max, right? The Max. So let's go ahead. I'm going to share your screen, Dre, and we'll dive right into this.
Please. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, OG, but did Warner Bros. Discovery have an earnings call where this actually took place, or was this just a press release?
From what I understand, it was like one of those it wasn't like an earnings call. It was more like the Disney Plus Day kind of like event, right? Where they just kind of filmed this big publicity thing. From what I understand, yeah.
I just wanted to make sure the context was present here. Well, a lot of people have been waiting for what's actually going to happen to the HBO Max brand of products regarding their DTC division, and now we know it's going to be just Max. And it'll have 3 different tiers with ads $9.99 a month, ad-free $15.99 a month, and ultimate ad-free $19.99 a month.
I'm sorry, before we move on, this is going to really sound horrible of me, but I'm sorry.
Sure.
It's right here. I go balls to the wall. So now that they changed it to the Max, if someone was to watch it on their iPad, would that make it a Maxi Pad?
Yes. That's exactly what it would make it, George. Thank you for that.
Yes, folks, we only have high-class stuff on this show.
That's terrible, George. Absolutely disgraceful. I cannot believe you. It's pretty good.
Now, this is interesting. Okay, and Warner and Zazie, they're getting dragged for this name. And it's really kind of... Look, here's the thing. I like Zazie, and I think that there have been things that Zazie has done in his vision that I think is very smart. Okay, and that might not be a popular thing to say, but I'm just being honest. I think there are some things, and we'll get to some of those things in a second, but there are some decisions he's made that have been very smart. This is not one of those decisions. You have one of the most iconic brands of all time, Warner Brothers, which I've said on this show many times. They have so much, the library that Warner Brothers has, the brand recognition that this studio has is next, like right here with Disney, okay? You also have HBO, which is pretty close too, with brand recognition and what have you. And then you have Cinemax, not so much, and that's the one they go with. Oh yeah, we'll do that. We'll you know what? We're gonna step over Warner. We're gonna step over HBO, and we'll go straight to Max. In what world is this good? In my opinion, if you really wanted to do, kind of incorporate the best of all worlds, I would have just had it called. I would have called it Warner Max. I think that would have made much more sense. This is not a good thing. This doesn't represent your overall brand very well. I don't know. I don't like it, and a lot of people don't.
You know what it would be like, OG? It'd be like if Disney, I mean, just for a second here, if anybody can imagine this, it'd be like taking the brand awareness and the brand value of like FastPass, for example, dropping that and then putting like some generic character on there and putting a plus on the end. I mean, that would be wild. That'd be That's exactly what they did, actually. Max, generic. I don't know what they're thinking right here to drop that iconic HBO kind of branding, that is synonymous with quality and so forth. A real quality product right there. 40 years they've had that HBO branding. To drop that completely and go with Max, I just think it's a dumb move. It's not so good. I understand Vampire Chickadee, HBO has a more adult connotation. I get it, but you could have softened it up even further. Let's say Warner Brothers HBO, for example, right, where you do have some interplay between the Warner Brothers brand that let's say has children's entertainment and so forth, and has kind of 4-quadrant content attached to its name, and then you have the HBO branding that I think impugns a kind of quality dynamic to it, right? Max, I mean, okay, Cinemax, for example, right? I mean, that has some adult connotations to it as well, to be fair. So I just think...
Please, I used to call it Skinamax.
Right. A lot of people did.
Skinamax, right, exactly, right? So there's some connotations to that, too.
Terrible.
Marty Snyder, Max is the new Jazz Kitchen. That's pretty good right there.
And honestly, if you kind of compare the two, everyone can relate to the name brand of Warner. Like Warner Brothers, like everyone recognizes that. So yeah, to subdue themselves to any name change and just go with Max, that name branding is not going to drive people to say, oh, I really want to see what kind of content they have. I mean, a total missed opportunity.
Well, and this is one of the things with Zazzy that, and a few of the earnings calls and stuff, that I feel like he kind of is in a lot of ways focusing on the wrong things. Like, okay, so he was from Discovery and he went over to Warner because, of the merger. But you would think that like when the merger happened, there'd be much more of a focus on the Warner Brothers element of the company, because that's really the recognizable stuff. Discovery, I get it. They got House Hunters and these reality shows, I get it. But Warner is the powerhouse, right? You would think when Discovery and Warner merged that you would really, really lean into your Warner Brothers branding. Not so much. I feel like you see these big spreads on the corporate earnings calls with Zazzy, and it's a bunch of like reality shows from Discovery that they're really pumping, right? It's like, and to be fair, DC and Potter, but for the most part, it's just like, why is he abandoning the Warner Brothers branding so much? That's the strongest thing you have in your corner pocket. Why is it so like taboo? I don't understand it. It's odd.
It's bizarre. I wonder what the focus group testing was on this, because this kind of seems like a shoot from the hip kind of move right here, maybe from Zazzy himself, and not necessarily understanding the connotation when you make a move like this. Even with let's say a series that we're actually going to talk about in a few moments, one of the tweets is Max has ordered the first ever scripted television series. It's like, oh, I didn't know Goofy's son was ordering television shows. That's kind of a weird thing, right? That's what it sounds like.
Yeah.
Because of just how they're using this name, this kind of nomenclature or verbiage. It's just, I don't think it works. Kyle Boucher says, did you guys watch the new insert show name here on Max? Yeah, exactly, right? Max, a terrible name. I'm sorry. Property Brothers, better than Potter in the multiverse, though. That's pretty funny right there. I like that. Vampire Chickadee, Warner Max, pretty smart. Yeah. I do agree.
That was the best bet. That was the safe bet, where they can kind of pick the name they wanted, but still utilize the stronger branding name out of it.
Yeah, and it's kind of like, I know the trend is to put plus on the end of everything. Warner Max kind of sounds like that, right? It kind of...
You're taking it to the max.
Yeah, taking it to the max. I like that. Brendan Wong, what kind of stupid name is that? Buford Mad Dog Tannen. Yeah, exactly, right? What kind of stupid name is that? Yeah, that kind of thing. Theme Park Casual. Hey, kids. Hey, what's going on, Casual? Flying Casual today. Glad to have you join us.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So let's pivot. I mean, we're talking Max, right? So
talking Max.
What was the big news on Max? Well, it was the Harry Potter show that was announced, right?
Correct. Max has ordered the first ever Harry Potter scripted television series, a faithful adaptation of the iconic books. And listen, this has been rumored for a little while now. I remember there was a certain couple of YouTube channels that broke this story right here. VR Pro, just saying. And it looks like they were correct. There is a reimagining taking place with the Harry Potter verse. And this time it will be I think a 7-season series. Well, here we go. Variety Harry Potter series adaptation officially ordered at HBO Max will feature entirely new cast. A Harry Potter TV series is officially moving forward at HBO Max. The announcement was made during Warner Bros. Discovery's presentation to press and investors on April 12th, during which it was announced that HBO Max and Discovery Plus are now officially combined into a new service dubbed simply Max. News of the show on the mega hit J.K. Rowling book series first leaked on April 3rd, but details have now been confirmed. It will say here, each season of the show will be based on one of the books in the franchise. A smart move with Warner
Very
Bros.
smart.
Discovery, describing the show as, quote, a decade-long series. Similar to how the original films produced by Warner Brothers back in the day were about 10 years. It will feature an entirely new cast from the films. Quote, we are delighted to give audiences the opportunity to discover Hogwarts in a whole new way, said Casey Bloys, chairman and CEO of HBO and Max Content. Harry Potter is a cultural phenomenon, and it is clear there is such an enduring love and thirst for the Wizarding World. In partnership with Warner Brothers Television and J.K. Rowling herself, which we'll get into in a moment, this new Max original series will dive deeper into each of the iconic books that fans have continued to enjoy for all these years. J.K. Rowling says this, Max's commitment to preserving the integrity of my books is important to me, and I'm looking forward to being part of this new adaptation, which will allow for a degree of depth and detail only afforded by a long-form television series, she says.
She's right on that, because with streaming, and Christian Harloff has said this a lot when it comes to like Star Wars and things like that, but you can with, for example, you have a 14, 15 episode season for a TV show. That's 1,400 what's it called? Hours of content there, right? Where you're not limited to a movie that's like 2 or 3 hours. You can do so that first book. I mean,
that's what I was actually going to say. That was my one stipulation with the films, was because I was one who read the books. I read every single book before seeing the film. I personally made that a goal of mine. Whether or not, however long the film was on, I had to finish the book before seeing the film, because what a lot of people end up doing is they just go by the film. Right. And they just rely on that, which, don't get me wrong, the films were great. But there is so much material, so much more within the books that they had to cut from the films because of that notion. So it was...
That's fantastic. That's awesome. That's pretty cool.
That was good, Marty. So that I am excited for. That, as you fellas have said, breaking up into the seasons, one season per book, and they could fit so much more material. Right. And also, being that this is coming from Rowling herself, we all know how much she is very protective of the Harry Potter brand. I mean, like when she was with Universal doing Wizarding World, I mean, like she was there, I mean, as kind of like a stickler to say, this will work. No, this has to be this has to be that. So if she is on board with this notion that Max is doing this, she will make sure that they do not make a mockery out of it.
She's endeared and beloved by fans.
Oh, yeah.
I guess that means that we got to talk about the Hagrid in the room. Let's say.
Yeah. No, well, and here's the other thing too, which is interesting, because it's smart to do each season as one book, because one of the great things about these movies was that the kids kind of grew up with the films, right? So they were of that age when they got to certain parts of this overall story. Well, now you could do the same kind of thing with the show. You can have season one. You can wait maybe a couple years for the next one, and you can have the new cast kind of age with the show. Oh, it's perfect. And you get so much content in each season. I mean, even if they do a small season, like, like a Mando, right? Mandalorian gets like 8 episodes this season.
Sure.
Even if you only do 8 episodes and each one's an hour, that's 8 hours based on the first book. I mean, it's incredible.
It is. And talking to, our initial thoughts on this, OG, were really extraordinary because we're coming at it from kind of like a Star Wars fan perspective, let's say, where it's like, wow, that would be sacrilege to redo the original trilogy, let's say, even in series format. But talking to, Harry Potter fans, they were like, no, we're super supportive of this, even with a new cast, because I think, as George beautifully laid out here, they understand the potential with actually kind of drawing these books out over a series and going into such specificity and such detail that you could never impart in an actual film. So, if done correctly, this will be a huge, I think, moneymaker for not just Warner Brothers Discovery, but also Universal, who was reinvesting into Harry Potter content. We have been talking about how evergreen are these actual properties. Well, if this is successful and it does reach that 7th season, well, it looks like those theme park properties will be relevant for at least 10 years and maybe see changes themselves to better reflect what's current in Harry Potter lore.
Now, Kyle is saying all I've been hearing about is how everyone thinks it's a terrible idea. And actually, Kyle, to your point, I have been seeing a lot of that on Twitter, actually, a lot of that on Twitter. But here's the thing, and I've said it many, many times, it's the culture war. It's the same reason why certain things like the Tiana thing and all that, it's become a political magnet. So you're going to have people on Twitter who don't like J.K. Rowling, and now they're going to shit all over the new show because of that reason. I'm not saying everyone that doesn't like this idea is doing it because of that reason, but you have to factor that into the equation when you're analyzing people's opinions based on something as hot, culture war driven as this. That is part of the equation here. So I don't know if it's necessarily people genuinely think it's a bad idea, or if it's like, you know what, I don't like JK, so automatically I hate it.
And I'll say this too. No,
you go. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that, speaking of the culture war itself, how the viability of this product here, look, Hogwarts Legacy just came out with an astounding array of controversy actually tied to it because J.K. Rowling was involved in the development and creation of that actual game. But it has been... the success has been overwhelming. It's been a huge phenomenon, even among people who said they would swear off Harry Potter forever because of the author's involvement. Well, didn't stop them from playing the actual game. So even in that culture war, we're seeing these things kind of take on, let's say, new shapes and sizes as we go along here.
Yeah.
Well, and I think even take J.K. Rowling out of the equation, just the show itself. We are in a time in society that whenever we hear something is being rebooted or remade or brought to a different light, the first thing as a community, as humans, we are creatures of habit. One of the first questions is, okay, how different is this going to be from its original concept? Is it going to be woke? Is it going to be leaning towards one side over the other, or vice versa? Because the films were made during a time where a lot of this stuff really wasn't into light, and now that it's being resurfaced and rebranded during a time era where, depending on who's part of a project, who isn't, how does that come about for the finished product? Right. And we're kind of seeing that even a little bit with the new upcoming live action Little Mermaid, where they censored out some things with some of the songs that were in the original animated film. So you kind of take it with a grain of salt, where it just comes to your mind to say, oh, they're rebooting Harry Potter, which is really cool. But are they going to throw some things in there that's going to be, anti this or politically driven that?
I think so. JK has said that, like, Hermione is a person of color, for example. I think we will see that change reflected, let's say, but because J.K. Rowling is involved in the way she is, and she's such a stickler for her universe, I think if there are changes, it will be in favor of the story and not just for the ideological whims
The
of the day, let's
ideological,
say.
yeah.
Yeah, but how's that going to play though? Because right now, the anti-woke people are supporting J.K. But now, if she starts to race swap, does that change their viewpoint of the franchise?
That's what I'm saying. So, like, no matter which way you go, that's what I'm saying.
That's
no matter
the open
which
question for sure.
No matter which way you go, you're going to lean towards one way or the other, whether or not that's your initial intention. It's just
Right.
it just automatically happens. Is you never can please everybody, and someone is going to get initially butthurt in the end.
Right. And Nerves and Gel here says, I hate J.K. Rowling and I think it's a brilliant money move. Probably won't watch it, but to each their own, I guess. You know, I respect that opinion that, Nerves, you're saying you don't like it, you're not going to watch it, but you see it as a great business decision. A lot of people can't separate that, right?
Yeah.
And I respect that viewpoint, that you can acknowledge it's a good money move, but hey, not for you. That's pretty cool. Pretty cool. So, and then, no, this is George says piracy looking real good right now.
I'm telling you, as these increases have been going on, and as the, let's say there's economic headwinds, let's say,
Right.
I have been seeing an uptick in terms of the data that I've been looking at for these alternative services, let's call them. So it's fascinating. It'll be an issue
And that's
sure.
what I love about this channel and this platform is no matter how anyone on either side of the spectrum, relates to social media, to all who come to this happy place, welcome. We accept
Exactly.
everyone's opinions, we accept everyone's thought process, and it's a good conversational piece. And I think a lot of people in today's time should really get the niche for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Just be civil, and we can all nerd out and have fun, regardless of your opinion at the end of the day. So let's move on.
Of something that has no controversy whatsoever.
right. Yeah, exactly. We're talking Super Mario. Now, I do want to, before we dive into this, I want to do a quick little programming note in regards to this segment for Mario. I've seen the movie, and Mr. Family Man has seen the movie, but our brother Dre has not. So we're going to talk some box office first, and get into all the numbers and all that good stuff. After the box office talk, Dre's gonna dip out, and we're gonna talk about the movie itself and kind of review the movie and dive into the meat and potatoes of the film. So that's kind of how we're gonna do this segment. But Dre, if you want to set the table for box office, Super Mario Brothers.
Box office has been, just wild here. We saw the initial estimates for the 3-day, and we were like, it's a little bit low. I think it's going to be a little bit higher than that. And we saw them revise even lower than that. It was like, that's kind of weird how they would kind of downplay this whole thing. Well, it opened April 5th for a 5-day weekend. That'll come crucially in a moment. But for its domestic haul, that is in North American territories, $204 million over that 5-day span for a global haul of $377 million. This is a huge movie, no matter how you slice it. But this is an absolute, I think, win for the Super Mario Brothers movie. Now, it does come with some nuance, however. And some people were kind of saying, well, wait a minute. Some people are calling this the highest, the biggest opening weekend for an animated movie ever. And it's like, well, hold on a second here. If we're comparing it to the predecessor for that title, Frozen 2 in 2019, that had a 3-day weekend, right? Where it, for its domestic haul, it made $130 million, and global took in $358 million for a 3-day compared to a 5-day. And interestingly, I was trying to find the comparisons between the both of them, right? And it's interesting. So the 3-day for Super Mario Brothers was about 319 million. So it's a little bit shy of that $358 million figure for Frozen 2. But here's the interesting thing, right? And if you dig into the numbers, it gets all kind of crazy, right? So this is the international performance for Frozen 2, right? And you can see there were big markets in China, Japan, South Korea, as you can see by the chart here. Well, UK, Mexico, all these things have something in common, though. They all premiered at the same time on that same weekend. So when you have that global figure being what it is at $358 million, you have to take into account that in all of these territories, it opened on the same weekend, whereas Super Mario Brothers didn't actually benefit from that. Interestingly enough, the largest, what is expected to be some of the largest territories where this will actually open, well, it hasn't even opened in. So Japan, for example, you'll see right here, zero, right? South Korea, for example, which is going to be a huge market, as you can see, 0. And it actually won't be hitting South Korea until April 26th. So this story hasn't been made just yet. So if you subtract some of those totals out from that global haul of Frozen 2, well, you get around $312 million, right? So kind of right in line with that $316 million figure that Super Mario Brothers actually had. And that's just it, too. There's some really interesting kind of developments here if you get deeper into the numbers. For example, China, for instance, right? It opened on April 5th, just with everybody else. But if you see right here, the number of screens was only about 10,000. If we compare that to just 4 years ago with Frozen 2, you see right here, 165,000, and that's the kind of disproportionate box office haul that you see right there, 54 million as compared to 11 million with Super Mario Brothers. So it's kind of an interesting thing playing out here. You know, this is not as apples and oranges as one might think.
No, it's not. And then Kyle brings up a great point too. Let's adjust the inflation numbers for Frozen 2 and Mario. I mean, inflation's gone through the roof since then.
Yep.
So I think that overall, for me personally, where I stand with this is that both of these films are wildly successful, and both of these films are making a shitload of money for their studios. And
let's talk about the shitload of money, right? Because I think that's very interesting. They are making a lot of money, but you know, in what proportions, right? So Frozen 2, for example, had a budget of $150 million, whereas Super Mario Brothers only had a budget of $100 million. So you might think, well, inflation aside, all those kind of numbers, they're raking in the cash far more just because they don't have that $50 million to contend with. But here's the key thing about that.
Right.
Super Mario Brothers is very unique in that it has a 50-50 deal straight right down the middle in terms of its investment and its revenue generation with Illumination as part of Universal and Nintendo. So when they take in that haul, well, you not only have to cut it down for the theaters and how much revenue that they take in, but you also have to cut it in half for Universal's portion of it. So even though you might think that they're making more money, in fact, they're not.
Yeah, no, that 50-50 split, which really caught me off guard, to be honest with you. That's a very high percentage. Nintendo is not playing. They are not playing at all. That was fascinating. Now, Marty brings up a point here. I think we should address this. Hold on one second. Let me move this. Marty says here, people talk about the 50-50 profit split with Nintendo. That's like saying Avatar won't make any money until Disney gets their $70 billion back from Fox. I think that's a little different, though, Marty, because you're talking about... Okay, if Universal bought Nintendo and they were like in debt, I think that's a little more apples to apples.
Yeah.
They just made a licensing deal with Universal. And quite frankly, it's extremely lopsided in Nintendo's favor. This is unusual how high of a percentage that they are getting in this.
Very much so. And this this 50-50 split doesn't go away no matter how big this Nintendo shared universe actually gets, right? I think they are going to have a 50-50 split or something similar for all of these productions. That includes, Zelda, Samus, all those kind of things that might actually be included. So yeah, that's don't like that comparison, but I see what you're saying. Michael Madsen, when people focus on making a good movie with an agenda, they do really well. Well, during the review section of this actual topic right here, might have something to say about that.
Yeah.
So keep those comments flowing.
I get what you're saying, Michael, but it's not completely agenda free. We'll get into it when. Yeah. We'll get
I want to
into
show you
it.
something else too while we're in the box office segment of this.
Yeah.
The largest territory that Super Mario Bros. Actually opened to was Mexico with $28 million. Now, if we compare that just to 4 years ago, Mexico only contributed about $28 million during its entire run for Frozen 2. That kind of tells you just how big of a player Mexico has actually become for some of these feature films, and with, I guess here, Super Mario Brothers specifically. So that's kind of an interesting thing here that they've been able to match the entire run of Frozen 2 in such a short time frame for Super Mario Brothers, the movie.
Well, it is, and it's interesting too because Frozen has only had 2 movies. I mean, Frozen's only been around for a decade, right? It kind of shows you the power of Frozen in a lot of ways. You're talking about a movie here, Super Mario Brothers. You're talking about 4 decades of fans behind this thing, 4 decades, generations of people that grew up on this video game and these characters. Is basically playing about where Frozen 2 is. I know one has advantages, one, at the end of the day, they're pretty much matched. That says a lot about Frozen. I mean, look, this has an advantage in terms of how many years behind it has, and Frozen in just a decade pretty much is pulling the same kind of box office numbers.
For now, remember, got to
we'll
open
see.
up in some more territories, and we'll see just how wide this thing is. But it's interesting, Frozen 2 actually topped out, I believe, about $1.4 billion, and I think VR just had a video on this saying that that Super Mario Brothers could eclipse that number of 1.5. I'm thinking it should if these numbers actually hold up, but well, we will see, right? And I would expect it to. I mean, you're talking about 40 years of kind of a multi-generational story that's actually taking place amongst audiences and so forth. It's going to be huge in Japan, huge in South Korea, maybe huge in China as more theaters open. It's kind of fascinating how all of this is actually turning out. But hey, look, listen, I'm glad it's pulled in the box office haul that it has, because I think it really kind of proves that family films are viable, even with short windows. Remember, Super Mario Brothers, I think early next month, late this
Early
month,
May.
it will actually go to streaming. And still, people turned up multiple times, which is good to see.
Yeah, Michael here says, to be fair, the whole reason the movie is a hit is because of Nintendo. Absolutely.
Yes.
Nintendo is the driving
Yeah.
force.
Yeah.
Kyle here says, is this going to be the last Illumination Nintendo movie since Nintendo bought an animation studio? Now, that's interesting, Kyle. Nintendo did buy an animation studio, but from what I understand, this is an ongoing deal now with Universal and Nintendo. There's rumors they're going to do a Zelda movie, which would be dope as shit if they did that. But they're wanting to do like a cinematic universe and I believe Universal is on board for all of those movies. But it does. But Kyle, you bring up a great point. Why did they buy the animation studio? That's kind of interesting.
Spin-off material, maybe.
Maybe.
I don't. It's an interesting arrangement right now, and Universal has already said we're excited to do more business with Nintendo. So we'll see how that actually plays out. But I mean, guys, just looking at this kind of thing, right? If this movie has already done box office bank right here. If capitalized and actually done correctly with a sprawling kind of Nintendo verse, right? We might be looking at the birth of the most successful and greatest singular IP animation franchise that the world has ever seen. I think right now Toy Story is the #1 dog in this arena right now.
And I think honestly, if they do pull that off, they will give Disney a run for their money.
I think so. I mean, this was thought unthinkable that an Illuminations film would actually compete on a level and at a scale like this before to, by some metrics, take the crown away from Disney as the largest opening for an animated film ever, and maybe the highest grossing animated film that we've ever seen. That really says something. I understand it's a split between Nintendo and all those kind of things right there, but I mean, this is something right here.
And Kyle mentions a Super Smash Brothers movie, perhaps. That's interesting because they can kind of take the format that they do for Marvel, like how they did with Infinity War and Endgame, and add that into as an animation quality where they all have their each individual films that lead up to one big gargantuous film, and that would be a smart move.
I think that's exactly where they're going, George. I think that's exactly where they're going. They want to not only present films with these characters in them, like Zelda or Metroid, but have them come together in kind of a Super Smash Brothers ultimate kind of combination film or crossover film. So that's what we have to look forward to on this front.
And Marty says 50% of something you didn't own is great. That's a fair point to make, but it's still a high percentage for most of these deals. They usually don't go that way, number one. But number two, also, Marty, this is one of the issues that I've been saying Universal has for a long time. They rent a lot of stuff, but they don't own a lot of stuff. The Universal, if they really want to be Disney's top contender, they got to start producing more in-house stuff. And stop borrowing from other studios, other entities as much as they do. They rely pretty heavily on that, and they got to get their in-house stuff in check. And I think they are. I think they are moving in that direction. I think they're moving in the right direction, absolutely. But with theme parks, all the big properties in their theme parks are rented. Harry Potter, Marvel, Nintendo, it's all borrowed stuff, right? They got to break out of that. They got to start making their own hits a little more than they do right now, I think. So
yeah, it's good to own everything in house, right? And sometimes that has been a limiting factor for Disney, right? For example, E.T., right? Steven Spielberg initially went to Disney to develop E.T., and it was like, I want to bring on my own guy for the for the score, John Williams, and it was like, no, we do everything in house and we own everything in house, and it's like, well, it's not going to work for us, and they took that to Universal. So sometimes that is a limiting factor, but owning your own stuff comes with many advantages, and when you're looking at $1.4 billion and you're taking all of that back after giving the distributors and theaters what they own, it's a lot different than taking that back and splitting it by half. So
we'll see. Yeah, and one more thing before Dre ducks out. Marty Snyder says, "Yep, they need WB." I'm telling you, Marty, if Universal Comcast manages it on God's green earth, I don't know how this deal would get approved right now with the environment, with the regulatory situation. It would be hard, okay, to be honest. But if Comcast can pull that deal off and buy Warner Brothers, the game has freaking changed. Look, I've said it many times on this channel. I think the Epic Universe factor is so overblown with the theme park community, out of control. This thing is like, people are saying this thing is going to change everything and yada yada. I'm saying no, it's probably not going to do that. It's probably going to cannibalize more of Universal's parks than affect Disney in any way. I've been saying that consistently, and I've been on an island, especially
the studio part.
Right, exactly. But I'll tell you right now, if Universal manages to snatch Warner Brothers, that is serious stuff for Disney. That is major, because now you have a company like Universal who's hungry, and now they have Looney Tunes, DC, Harry Potter, all this stuff. Then you get worried. If you're Disney, then you get worried.
It's a content repository that's been relevant and has been built over decades. That changes the game significantly. But yeah. I will go ahead, hand it off to these fine gentlemen so that they can have their review segment. I do appreciate you guys having me on.
Absolutely.
If anybody wants to see me, you can go ahead and do so right down there at Vash Sky. Just go ahead and type that in, and it should pop up for, as Christine Wastelands McCarthy would say, for all the
Robust.
discussion right there. And if you want to see me, well, it's going to be on the channel you're watching right now, Orange Grove 55, where we have some amazing shows like the one you're watching right now with Orange Grove 55 and Orange Nerd, hosted by the amazing person on my left right here. Citrus Corner, which we dive into everything Walt Disney World related, hosted by the amazing person below me right now. Story Geeks with Jay, where we are right now covering every single episode of Mandalorian as it comes out. And this last one was a doozy. You're definitely going to want to tune in for that. And my own Freshly Squeezed, your source for juice, news, and info, squeezed fresh right from the Grove.
And Dre, I just want to say, once you see the movie, we'll do a video with you in it, reviewing it, because I'm really curious about your thoughts. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Go ahead, George.
I was actually just going to took the words right out of my mouth. We'll definitely come back to this once you see the movie. Just so you know, brother, you will be missed for this final segment, but definitely looking forward to hearing your thoughts when you do see the film.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, guys. I cannot wait. Until
See you
then,
later.
we will see you then.
All right, chat. Let's go ahead and talk about this movie. Out the gate, I got to be honest, right? Like, I've made no bones about it on the channel many, many times. I'm not an Illuminations fan. I'm just not. I'm not into the Minions. A lot of their movies are just kind of like, they're kind of kiddie movies. I got to be real. Like, if I had kids, maybe I'd be like, okay, these are okay to sit through for my kid, but I don't have kids, and I just don't find much pleasure in their brand. Okay. So going into this movie, I was like, with that mindset, oh gosh, it's an Illumination movie, right? I see the movie and I absolutely love it. I absolutely love this movie. I thought it was a love letter to Nintendo, but mostly a love letter to the Super Mario Brothers franchise. I thought they did a really good job. It was just the right amount of time too. It was an hour and a half. That's all you really needed for something like this. Yes, the story wasn't really deep. It was very surface level. But that's all you really need for a Mario Brothers movie. That's all you really need. Now, look, if they do a Zelda movie, that's a whole nother conversation. For Zelda, you need to dive deep into the lore. You need to do a little deeper of a story for something like that. Maybe even a trilogy for Zelda and really go deep. But for Mario, you don't need to do that. So I thought it was just the right amount of story. I thought the animation was absolutely gorgeous. Everything that we saw in this movie was so on model to what we're used to as how we see the characters, right? In the games and what have you. It was so on model, so perfectly well done. I love the deep cuts, like the Super Mario Brothers rap at the beginning of the film. Look, I'm an older guy. I'm in my early 40s, and there was the Super Mario Brothers Super Show when I was a kid on Fox, and I used to watch that show all the time. The fact that they incorporated that theme song into this movie, I thought was really, really awesome. And it plays to what I'm saying. It's a love letter to the franchise throughout the entire movie. Now, is the movie perfect? Absolutely not. One of my big issues with the movie is Peach, in my opinion, because Peach, yeah, look, you could tell, and this is where I kind of, when you said there's no agenda, this is where I kind of respectfully disagree. The Peach thing, you can tell they wanted her to go full girl boss, like Peach Skywalker kind of situation. And they pulled back. Maybe the pullback was because of Nintendo and their input. I don't really know. But that was definitely a thing. And that's something that Disney gets a lot of shit for. These kind of female characters, these kind of badass, can't beat them kind of characters. And I saw a lot of that kind of in this character, in this movie. So when I see people say, well, there's no agenda, or this movie is completely not woke, it kind of is. At least her character was, in my opinion. But overall, I'm not crapping on this movie at all. I absolutely love this movie. I give it a solid A. I had a blast watching this movie. George, what are your thoughts?
So my experience with this film out of the gate was a little bit different than yours. I had seen the movie with my 13-year-old son, which we both were and still are huge fans of Mario. I mean, I grew up in the 90s. You know, we had the Super NES and the Sega, and well, I mean, Super Mario wasn't, well, yeah, certain aspects of it was on Sega, but I had all those classic consoles and everything. So I was very interested in this film, but even with my son, we both were a little bit hesitant on going into this because Josh is a big component of saying that they never get video games right for film.
Oh, he's right.
And I agree with him on that. I mean, they're absolutely right. It's a hit or miss, and it's always a miss. So I think my problem that I did to myself, I went into this already leaning towards that I wasn't going to like it because I'm just like with you, OG. I'm not a huge Illuminations fan. So automatically I'm thinking, okay, Despicable Me, Minions, like it was like, I had that tunnel vision. And I think that's where it kind of, it spoiled it for me. So when I seen it the first time, I was not a fan of this. I remember jumping on a private DM with the guys, and actually some of you who are part of the chat right now, and I thought it was kind of funny that I said I seen the movie, and I out of sheer ignorance put my phone down, and then I look at my phone and everyone's like blowing up the chat. George just ghosted us. We didn't even get a response of what the movie was. I thought that was kind of funny, but I was not a fan of the film. It felt a little bit rushed to me, which I do understand for a movie based off of Super Mario Brothers. It can't be super long, but it felt like the storyline just felt a little bit rushed for me. Definitely the components with Peach was a huge, like I noticed that right off the bat. And it's like, if you're going to base it off of a video game, I'm sorry, Peach is supposed to be the damsel in distress. She gets kidnapped by Bowser. Mario has to be the hero. I would have rather, if Mario was supposed to have a little bit of a weaker side to him, I would have rather it been the Toads that taught him how to finagle through the warp pipes and what have you, not Peach. I would have rather be where he briefly encounters with Peach, but is kidnapped by Bowser, and kind of have Luigi by his side, because it's almost like they made Luigi become the scaredy cat, which I get it. It paid homage to Luigi's Mansion, which I did enjoy that, but don't incorporate the whole character arc of Luigi of being this kind of bent, frail sort of character until the very end. Like, I wanted to see more characterization of Luigi and how his relationship is with Mario teaming up, because when you play that classic game, you kind of have like that tag team duo, and you only get that at the very end. I wanted to see that throughout the movie.
That's a fair point. That's a fair criticism. You don't see much of the Mario Luigi action together with the two of them. Now, here's the other thing too I wanted to bring up, because I think I want to be fair. I want to be completely fair with the Peach girl boss stuff. It definitely was girl boss, and it definitely was what people would call woke. I definitely was there. But here's the other thing too. To be fair to Nintendo and Illumination, Super Mario Brothers. Well, the first one, Mario, you had to save the princess. The second game, though, in the 80s or early 90s, she was a playable character. She was a playable character.
That is true.
So I mean, I guess you can kind of say, okay.
I think it was more so. I think it was more of the dominating of Mario.
Right. And she did that quite a bit in this.
Yeah, I think that was the thing where I think if they would have made it more like of a team effort, if they was to go that route, but kind of make Mario still be the head leader, so to speak. Right, that would have proclaimed more towards the game. Now, I do have to say, I did see this a second time.
Okay.
The second time, because I thought, you know what, I'm going to go into this theater with a little more optimism to try to find, because I do agree with you, the animation is breathtaking. It fits so well, like with the whole gameplay of the classic video games, and even to the Super Nintendo world at Universal, it fits so well. So I went into this theater saying, okay, I'm going to keep an open mind. I'm really going to focus on it. And the second time around, it was not as bad as the first time. Do I still find issues with it? Yes, obviously. But I gained a little bit more of appreciation of what they were trying to do with it after seeing it a second time around. And I actually do agree with Marty. Jack Black was phenomenal as Bowser Koopa. I mean, I think the way that he portrayed the character, it was a threat, but nothing too overpowering. And
Right.
I do like how they kind of paid homage to the Mario Odyssey game where they had like the wedding outfits between
Right.
Koopa and Peach. And then even at the very beginning where Mario's playing like that classic pixel video game in his room, I love how that just screamed like of how the game actually was in correlation back in the 80s and 90s.
Well, and a little fun fact: the game that Mario was playing in the beginning was Kid Icarus, and I absolutely loved that game as a kid. Kid Icarus. It was a dope game, and that's what I'm saying when I was saying like that. This movie really was a love letter to like Nintendo. It really was. It was something really special. Yeah, Jack Black was amazing. I completely agree. Another thing that I really thought was kind of clever was how they incorporated Donkey Kong. And they had like all the toads and the princess around that big planning like war room table. And they're talking about, well, we got to negotiate with the Kongs, right? We got to, and it reminded me something that you would see like in House of Dragon or something. I'm like, this is hilarious, absolutely hilarious. So I love that. I thought that was really, really, really clever. Let me see here.
That was actually my favorite scene, like as far as like integrated within the film.
Yeah, it was really clever. And Marty here says the Donkey Kong rap and DK entrance had me rolling. Me too. That was really funny. That was some funny stuff, dude. Yeah, it was a fun movie. It was, and the thing I like about it too is like it's very to kind of relate it to video games. Like when it comes to video games or gaming in general, I don't like a lot of games that I have to like really like work at, right? Not work at, but like overly complex games. Like when I'm gaming, I don't want to be stressed out. I want to just pick something up and it's like a stress reliever. So a lot of games that I'm into are like the old school NES games or like Angry Birds and things like that. This movie feels like the game, the original game in a lot of ways, where you pick it up and watch it. There's not a whole lot involved in it. It's just a very easy to watch kind of entertainment for an hour and a half. Yeah, I thought that was a great element of it. So I don't know. I mean, we'll see. I think that this is, well, I know we just talked about it. The box office is very much successful. It's doing bonkers business. I'm sure we're going to see a ton of sequels and other characters incorporated into this universe. I'm excited to see what they do with it.
And especially at the very end with the little extra after credit scene where they show the dino egg cracking open, which we all know who that is. That's everyone's favorite green dinosaur, Yoshi. So it's basically them telling us, we're not stopping with this film. They are so heavily relying on this film being so successful,
right?
Which obviously it is. So
yeah.
they kind of banked for their buck on that one, that they already implemented, okay, we're going to have a sequel for this. And here's a little treat for you to say, here's what you have to look forward to.
Well, yeah, and you have something here where we have the superhero cinematic universes with the MCU and DC, right? You have basically a cinematic universe with Star Wars as well, right? Mm-hmm. This is something that now Universal and Nintendo are going to do something very different, but very much similar to what you see with the MCU and Star Wars, where they're taking video games now, Nintendo games, and building out that overall universe. And they can do just the same thing that Marvel does with it. They can do movies. If Comcast ends up getting Hulu, they can do shows based on Nintendo games. The sky is the absolute limit, right? And right now, in a world where people are arguing that maybe there's a little bit of superhero fatigue with these superhero movies, maybe this is the perfect time for a video game cinematic universe to kind of step in and fill that void. So it's big money for both of these companies, Universal and Nintendo. and it's very interesting where they can possibly go with this stuff. The biggest thing for me would be Zelda. I think that would be just incredible. And a Zelda movie could be like Universal's answer to like the Disney fairy tale almost, with all the magic and lore. That could be kind of their fairy tale franchise almost.
I always kind of took Zelda as it being like an animated video game before like the Lord of the Rings, sort of kind of like having that kind of lore, like with the elves and in the kingdom and what have you. So I could definitely see Universal taking that route on top of even with Illuminations. And I think because we touched upon it a little earlier that, you know, not really knowing why they would create another animation studio, but I feel like based on the ending of how Super Mario Brothers was with Illuminations plans on to continue the Super Nintendo franchises within Illuminations, and I think that's where it's going to tie in more with Universal, because they already Illuminations and Universal kind of tie in together already. So it's basically a win-win for both companies.
Yeah, no, 100%. And, big congratulations to both Universal and Nintendo for this huge success. You know, we can all quibble on Twitter about which movie made more, Frozen 2 or Mario. And at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter, because Frozen 2 made a shitload of money and Mario is making a shitload of money. And at the end of the day, it's a shitload of money. So it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. This is a huge win for Universal, and much kudos to them for it.
Basically, they're all shitting their pants right to the bank.
Yeah, exactly. So incredible stuff here. Real quick before we close it out, Marty says here, if Universal gets Pokemon, that would be wild. And he follows up with, Pokemon is the #1 IP in the world. I don't know much about it, but it's not very utilized in theater based on what it is, in my opinion. Yeah, it's not. I mean, they had that Detective Pikachu movie a few years ago, which looked adorable, but I don't know how well that did. You could do a lot with Pokemon, and you can do a lot both in theaters and in the parks. You know, we talked earlier about the Marvel theme park rights over at Island of Adventure. Well, you get Pokemon, you can turn that into a Pokemon Island or something.
And also, wasn't there early concept talks of even incorporating Kirby?
I thought so. Yeah, I thought I heard rumors.
So I mean, like
that.
down the road, I mean, they could even add Kirby into the mix, because even Kirby's part of Super Smash Brothers. So if they wanted to, they can kind of dip into that a little bit.
Absolutely. So I gave my score. I gave it a solid A. What would you give it? What would you give the movie overall, George?
Well, when I first saw the movie, I gave it a D-.
Oh man,
that was bad. Yeah,
that's brutal.
After I went back a second time, I give it a solid B+.
Wow, your opinion changed quite a bit then.
Yeah.
Second time out the gate. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
If it was in numbers, I would say first time was like a 2.5. Okay. Now I give it an 8.
Okay. Yeah, I was very positive about it. And maybe because my expectations for an Illumination movie was so like rock bottom that I went into this going like, how bad, like this is going to be bad. Well, but I really walked out of that theater going, this was an absolute awesome movie. As an old school Nintendo fan, I really fell in love with a lot of the references and what have you. That was a really good time in theaters. But Mr. Balls to the Wall, Disney Family Man 23. It was an honor today talking shop with you today. And it was an honor talking shop with all of you in the chat. Marty Snyder, Matthew Murr, Theme Park Casual, Rogue Attraction, SoCal Imagine Channel, Kyle Boucher, No This Is Jerd, Nerves and Gel, just everybody. If I'm missing anybody, Vampire Chickadee, thank you all so much for joining us tonight. We had a great time with y'all, all of y'all. George, if you could let everybody at home know where they can find you on social media, sir.
Absolutely. You can find me on my YouTube channel, Disney Family Man 23. You can interact with me on Twitter at Disney George. Please check out the podcast, A Walk with Walt, which I am part of. And of course, you can find me here on my home base at Orange Grove 55 with Citrus Corner, with all that sweet, juicy, but sometimes sticky Disney news and info.
All There we go. You know,
There we
had to
go.
throw some Mario in there. You know, why
Of
not?
course.
Why not? Why not? But again, thank you all so much for watching. If you're watching this on the replay, go ahead and comment down below with all your thoughts on everything we discussed today. We would love to hear from you. And as always, have a wonderful, wonderful day.